Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to edit videos in Adobe Premiere Pro. I personally love using Adobe Premiere Pro because I'm a graphic designer and so I already have the full Adobe Creative Cloud. This program is very robust. It's already included in the Creative Cloud, so it's not something that I'm paying additionally for, which I absolutely love. So let's go ahead and dive into Premiere Pro. All right, hi everyone, I'm Laney. I'm a wedding invitation designer, but I love to teach people how to run their business, and video is becoming a much bigger part of your business. If you want to start a YouTube channel, if you want to be editing your Reels and TikToks, if you just want to create a cool video for your website, then it's going to be important to learn how to use some of these programs so you don't always have to outsource. If you want to do something really fancy, you can learn how to do that in here. I typically kind of set a threshold for my ability with video, and if I need to do something more advanced, I might hire out for that, but I can get a lot of stuff done with just some simple editing projects here in Adobe Premiere Pro. I'll link another video that has all of my recording equipment linked so you can see what I'm using for recording all these videos. So in Premiere Pro, you're going to start a project. Project is basically a file, just a project that you're working on. And then within that project, you can have as many different sequences as you want. So a sequence is going to be an individual video, and a project can have as many of those as you want. If you're just editing like a TikTok video, a YouTube video, or something, you typically only need one sequence. When you start your project, I'll do editing in Premiere Pro, video. And then you can go in and select any of your media, and you can always import media later if you want to. So I've selected just this little clip that I created. It's silly for the purposes of this video. And then over here, you can decide if you want to create a new sequence with that information, or if you don't, since this is the only video that's going to be in the sequence, I'm just going to have it create a new sequence, and I'll name this like test video. So now we're here in the editing space of Premiere Pro. There's so many things here. I'm going to move my little face over to the side, and you can see in this bottom panel that I have my test video, which was my sequence name. So this is the actual sequence. And then the ignore.me.mp4 is the video content. So if you've used Adobe programs in the past, you can kind of think of this as like placing something. So if I were to move this away from the folder that I had on my computer, then Premiere Pro would no longer be able to find it. They would have to ask me to relocate it again because they're not really like downloading that file into my project. They're just kind of linking out to it. So I can make all these edits to it, but it's not going to make the file size as large as it would be if it had all the different videos. So, because imagine adding like 10 different videos in here. Those are all going to be really large files. And you don't want your file size to get really clunky, and you don't want your computer to have a hard time making the edits or processing the edits. Within this panel, you can also add any like graphics that you want, static graphics, other videos, any logos, PNGs, just anything that you're going to want to put in your video, you can add over here in this media panel. Over here, this is our timeline, and we have our sequence open. You can open and close different sequences as you want. And then if you click on an individual piece of media, you can see that it opens up here in this panel, whereas your sequence is always going to open in the timeline panel. And in this timeline panel, you can decide which layers you have turned on. So right now we have a video layer and then an audio layer, and these are linked together. So if I move them around, they are going to stay together. You can always unlink them if you want to change the audio without changing the video. For simple videos, this is typically a good option because, for instance, if I were to cut a piece of it, I would want to cut the audio and the video in the same place. But of course, that can get more complicated depending on what you're doing. This slider will zoom in or zoom out, and you can really see what's happening with the audio feedback here, so it makes it a little easier to edit. So for instance, you can see there's silence right here. Usually when I'm editing my videos, silence means I messed up, I'm thinking, I'm pulling something up on my computer, etc. So I typically go through and just cut those silent parts out. So it's nice to be able to see those, especially at the beginning. This is like me coughing and or burping. I'm pregnant, sorry. And then you can see where I actually kind of get started on here. So those audio waves really help to visualize exactly where to cut your video, and you can always like zoom in or out if you want to get more specific on that. If, for instance, we wanted the video to be toggled off, we could do that and we would still have our audio here, or we could always lock these so they can't be edited, unlock them, and you can add different streams so you could have a different video playing on top of this, and it's kind of like layers in Photoshop or something. Whatever is on top is going to show up. So if we added another video on this top line here, it would show over this video. You can use this microphone button to actually do a recording directly here in Premiere Pro. It's not going to let me do that right now because I'm using the microphone to film this video, but you can do that if you want to do a voiceover. Anything that's playing in the top left panel is just part of the original clip, so you can play this just to see what it is, remind yourself, what I'm saying here, remind me of what this clip is about. I can use these little buttons here, marking in and marking out. And I can use this insert to insert just this small section into my timeline. So if I put my little cursor here and click insert, it's just going to insert that exact little piece. And when you have these different sections highlighted, you can move them around, make edits to them, or of course delete them. And then anything you see on this top right screen is basically your final video. I'm going to get it off of me coughing because no one likes to see that. So this is going to be kind of your final video, the final version of the project. And as you can see, if I move my cursor, it goes through it, and you can kind of hear. Pressing the space bar will have it play, and pressing the space bar will have it stop. And then whichever panel you have outlined in blue or selected, if you press the tilde, that's a squiggly line on the top left of your keyboard, that's going to expand that particular panel for you in case you need to zoom in. So something you might want to do is zoom in on this final video, kind of play it, make sure it's working properly. And then if you press the tilde again, it's going to bring you back into this editing space. So wherever you place your cursor is pretty much where the edit is going to happen over here. So let's do a couple simple edits. I'm going to first delete all this space where I'm not really saying anything. So you press C, that's going to take you to the keyboard shortcut for cutting. So I'm going to cut right here, and I'm going to make another cut right here before the audio starts up again. And then just like in other Adobe programs, V will take you back to the selection tool. I can select this particular one and I can delete it. And then I can select this empty space and also delete that. Now, if I didn't want to do that, I could do what's called a ripple delete. And a ripple delete is just going to delete the section and then also delete the empty space with it. And I've changed the ripple delete to be Z on my keyboard. So every time I click Z, it's going to delete the silent clip as well as that empty space. And that just saves me from having to manually do both of those things. Another thing I do is audio gain, and that just makes the audio increase a little bit. You can see that this is a little bit quieter than some of these louder parts here. And sometimes that just happens, or sometimes you just need to make your audio a little bit quieter or less quiet. So if you right click on that audio track and use audio gain, you can use positive numbers like 4, and you can see that increase. You can also use negative numbers if you want it to go down, and you can see the volume got a little lower there. Sometimes I will, for instance, if I wanted this to be as loud as this, then I'll make a cut. So that's C, make a cut here, and then I will just audio gain this particular clip to make it a little bit louder so it doesn't sound as incongruous with the rest of the pieces. Of course, there's a lot more audio editing you can do, but I just want to give you there's so much more you can do in this program than I've ever done. I just want to give you some simple tips to creating, simple but effective videos. Another option I use for audio often is effects. And so if you click on this little arrow over here in the media browser, you'll find some effects, and I use some audio effects. These are pre-done for you by people who are way smarter than me. So I like to use this noise reduction just because I often have noise in my room, and that could be like my laptop freaking out. It could be dogs in the background, etc. So I often use this denoise. You just drag it in here, and you can tell if it took effect by the green in the FX. Then if you've already made a bunch of clips and you wanted to make sure that you did the denoise on every single one and you didn't want to have to drag it to every single one and make sure it went, then what you can do is right click on this click and click copy. And then on any of the other clips that you want to add this to. So you can select all the other clips if you're interested, and then you can right click and click paste attributes, and I'll show you which attributes are going to paste here. So for instance, we have our effect of denoise, we have our volume if we did that audio gain, and there are some other things in the effects panel that we'll use, which will also copy over if you do this in the future. So now if you see, we go over to the FX and you can see that it's purple, meaning that it has copied over from this other one here. And this one's still gray because it hasn't copied over. So when we paste it, it's going to turn purple to show that there's effects on. Another thing that's important here is your sequence size. So if you go into your sequence and look at your settings, then you'll see what your frame rate is. Typically, you'll want to go with like the 29.97 or 30. Those are a couple different options. If you're recording on a really good device, etc., you can often set those settings on that device specifically. And then your frame size will depend on what this is for. So for instance, if this is for TikTok or something, you might want to do 1080 by 1920. So it's a vertical 9 to 16 versus 16 to 9. And then what I find is I always want square pixels for this to not get really warped and out of size. There's a lot of other settings that you can play with here, but in general, we want that to pretty much be whatever size you want. If you ever have any questions about what size it should be, just Google, video size for TikTok and it will give you an answer. Then if you want to change the size of your video within the frame, you can go over here to these effects controls, and there's a lot of stuff you can do. So it's only going to apply to the selected clip at this point, and then what you're going to see up here will only apply where this little slider is. So sometimes if you have this one selected, but the slider is over here, you won't see the changes. So just make sure whichever one you're editing, you have that slider inside of that particular clip if you want to see the changes. So you can scale just by dragging your mouse up or down, and you can also click into these numbers and type them in. So if I wanted this to be 90, and then you can do the same thing with the position, moving it left or right and up and down. Let's do that if I just really wanted to be in the bottom left corner for some reason. Same for rotation. And then if you wanted a different rotation anchor point, you could set that here. So you can do a lot of things. And then those will also copy over when you do the copy and paste attributes. So if you, for instance, zoom in by 12% on every single clip and you want to copy that over, you can do that. Of course, there are tons of other things you can do here, mess with the opacity, etc., but I don't want to make it too confusing. And then if you would like to add some text over your video, you can use this graphics and titles panel. There's going to be so much you can do here that I don't want to fully overwhelm, but the general idea for just some basic text would be to select that clip and then go in here and add new layer, and you can decide if you want text or a certain shape, or you can add something from a file as well. Let's just add some basic text, and then this is a separate line that's a visual line, and it will show exactly how long that text will last on screen. So if you want it to last less time, you can change it. If you want it to last more time, you can change that as well. And then as I mentioned, they go in order of hierarchy. So this text is going to be on top of this video. If you wanted to change that around, if you had a bunch of different graphics and you didn't want it to be on top, you could just move it amongst different layers to where you want it to be. So let's move this around. You can use all of these settings for if you want, or you can just kind of drag it and move it around. So you can put in your little text, whatever it is you want it to say. And then you can use all of the different tools that you'd use in Adobe, like Adobe fonts. You have, your faux bolds, your all caps, your tracking, your tilt, your alignment, just all the different things here. Fill, stroke, background shadow, etc. Then what this will look like is it'll just come up and last for as long as you have it on here, and then it will go away. And then if you wanted to add like a rectangle behind it, you could absolutely add a new layer with a rectangle, put that behind it, and edit all the colors and everything there too. Now, after we've made all the changes we want to our particular sequence, then we will want to save everything out. As long as you're working on this, you'll want to keep all of your imported files where they were on your computer. So it's nice to have a folder of like working files or working projects where you put all of those things so that it doesn't get confused. Once you're done with all the edits you want to make to your individual sequence, you can export it. So we're just going to do File and Export. Export media. And then you have a bunch of settings here that you can use. So if you're doing this for YouTube or Creative Cloud, Behance, etc., you can just turn on this YouTube setting and it's going to know exactly what to do here. Typically, I would like to just change the name of this. I guess test video is great for this. You can change where it's going to save. And there's a bunch of different presets here that you might want to use. I typically do use this high quality 1080p. Let's see what YouTube suggests. Yep, high quality 1080p. And H.264 is typically a good format. You can even connect your channel here and have it automatically upload the video to your channel, which is just really cool. I love that. But you can check on the video and audio settings in general. I'm not changing much of what's going on here. Let's just go back to the media file to keep it really simple. Most of this is going to be the settings that you want. If you have a little bit more info or if you're trying to do something very specific, you can always look up settings that work for that particular format. And then you have two options. So if I click export, it's going to export as it is right now, and it's going to take a little bit of time. This video is like 30 seconds, so it's not going to take that much time. But if you were exporting a bunch at once, then you probably want to send to the media encoder. This is another app that comes free with Creative Cloud, and it's kind of a holding dock for all your exporting files. Once your video is in media encoder, you're good to go. You can exit out of Premiere Pro at any point, and it won't affect their ability to export. And then when you do have time, for instance, when you're not actively using your computer, like at the end of the day, you can set everything to export. So if I press play, then this video is going to export. And then if I have any other videos here, it's going to export as well. We have selected both the media file and the YouTube option. So we're going to actually have two different videos that will export. So when I press play, you'll see that this one goes ahead and starts exporting, and then this one is ready and it will go next. So these didn't take a long time, but if you had a really large project with a lot of different files and videos in it, then you would understand why it might take a little longer, and you don't want this happening when you're trying to actually use your computer. This one failed because I'm not logged into YouTube, but that's okay. So I love Media Encoder because it allows you to do this kind of at the end of the day when you don't need your computer anymore, and you can go ahead and close out of all the different projects you're working on in Premiere Pro. All right, I hope this gave you a basic understanding. I feel like if you're a real video editor and you watch this, you would be so cringy at me, but I think so many of us are not real video editors and we just want a little bit of help kind of cutting, pasting things together, opening projects, doing some of the small things that you can do here in Premiere Pro. And then there's so much deeper that you can dive. I have another video that shows all of my different recording equipment, the lights, cameras, everything that I use. So definitely check that out if you're interested in coming up with some ideas for simple, affordable, easy to use equipment that will get you some decent quality videos that aren't like that, you know, top tier professional video quality necessarily, but will still help you add video into your business a little bit more.